Couple of guys at 170 pounds coming off huge wins in their last time out. We have Impa Kasanganay representing Sanford MMA taking on Carlston Harris. This is a guy coming into the UFC. I know we were both really excited. And listen, pats on the back because we had him to beat Christian Aguilera. And did he ever? Looked amazing in that fight. Went with his patented, anaconda choke in that one. His win to get into the UFC was a Darce over... Was it a Khabib Nurmagomedov type fighter in the EFC and UAE Warriors card that was co-promoted? Yes, it was. And Matt, because this is Carlston Harris' second time out, we're going to throw it on over to a rookie review sponsored by our own 15-minute card breaks. You can check out our second channel down below in the comments section. But really important to learn about Harris and his journey into the UFC. Then we can focus on that ever-important Aguilera fight. Throw it on back to the rookie review. Really interesting fight in this one because for Carlston Harris, he was one of those guys that was featured on not Dana White's looking for a fight. It was Dana White's looking FWD to a fight. I'm assuming that's forward, but if you go back and you look at his last win, he picked up the big finish over Segid Izagamev, who was 17-1. That was on a co-promoted EFC, which was Eagles and UAE Warriors card, and it was taking place on Fight Island in and around the time when Dana White tried to go all LeBron James on ABC and had the decision with Khabib Nurmagomedov where they shut a white door in a boardroom, had a chat, made everybody feel like Khabib was coming back, and then in the end, he wasn't. Carlston Harris gets contract. And if you've ever watched him fight, this guy has a really neat style where he's looking to take you down, he's looking to grind you out, and he does have plenty of finish wins. You look at it, 15 total, 8 of them by finish, 4 by knockout, 4 by submission, but very much a grinder. He'll go in there, he'll try and snatch a leg, work for a single, work for a double, even bring you up against the cage just to try and knock down your base, wear you out, and finish you. And if he doesn't, then more than likely he's going to win by decision. Again, 15-4 the total record. He's 33 years old, nearly 34, and you don't see a lot of fighters getting their debut, especially at welterweight, being that far up, and I say far up, but being that far up in age, especially being a prospect like that. So maybe an unlikely signing to the UFC.
But it is unfortunate, and I'm just going to expand a little bit upon what you had sort of mentioned. Carlston Harris is kind of in that Jaime Barcelos area where it's like, damn, I really wish this guy was like 5 years younger, because it really is unfortunate that a guy at 170 is only getting his first opportunity at the age of 33, almost 34, because at 170... it's not like age is going to catch up to you like maybe a Dominic Cruz at bantamweight. You can age a little bit more gracefully. Look, Cowboy Cerrone's in the co-main event. But for Harris, it would have been nice if you could see him in the UFC a little bit earlier so that he could be able to do his run maybe a little bit earlier. For Carlston Harris, if he is able to get in there, get on the hips of Aguilera, and again, people hate it when I say this and I hate saying it, making it a boring fight and trying to at least extinguish some of those flames that Aguilera comes in with, I do think Carlston can get his UFC career off to the right track.
If you look at Carlston Harris's 5 on in, and we talk about it, especially with the graphics, you look at it, Segid Izagamev, he gets the win there, who's 17-1. Alex Santos, 9-7-1. Claudio Rocha at 12-11. That was kind of like a bounce back win because before that, he was the Brave champ at 170. He picked up a big win over Carl Booth, a name that people might recognize out of Europe. And then he lost to Jalal Hussein Al-Salawi. And that's a guy that we've been talking about a fair bit with Fight Night Picks, I want to say, because he's kind of like the Brave CF guy that you need to know. It's either Jalal Hussein Al-Salawi or Abdul Abduragimov. We talked about him in an episode of Keeping Score, which is on our Instagram, at Fight Night Picks. But those are kind of the two guys at 170 over with Brave. For Carlston Harris, though, again, came up, had a fight with Immortal, had a fight, or some fights with Brave, with Shuto, and then he has that one fight on a big UAE Warriors card in front of the brass, Dana White, Dean Thomas, a guy who poor Khabib thought was, who do you think he was? Eve Edwards?
He didn't know who he was.
Yeah, it was really weird. And that was a weird thing to punctuate, but they also punctuated the whole Josh Fabia thing, and look how that turned out. Christian Aguilera didn't really stand a chance in that fight.
No, he didn't.
No, it wasn't even really close. So for Harris, you got to continue to win. We all know that. He's 34 at this point, 34 and 2 months old, taking on Impa Kasanganay. And as excited as we are about Harris and that win over Aguilera, man, Impa Kasanganay, yes, he was on the receiving end of a Twitter meme. He ended up in part of a Kanye West song, kind of. Wasn't his fault. It was Joaquin Buckley's, who's also on this card. But for Kasanganay, moved from Gym O to Sanford MMA. Moved down a weight class. First time fighting at 170 pounds. For a heavily muscled guy, you worry about him making the move down a weight class. Remember, heavily muscled guy at 135 pounds. TJ Dillashaw, he moved to 125. EPO, got knocked out. But for Kasanganay, moves down, looks all right, and then looked amazing against Sasha Palatnikov. Ended up submitting him in the second round of that fight. Didn't really give him an inch in that one either. So for Kasanganay, huge win his last time out. Harris, huge win last time out. Both of these guys implement different styles in just about every aspect of their fighting. But at the end of the day, both very athletically well-rounded.
Impa Kasanganay had a bad day at work. It happens. You've had them. I've had them. But when I have a bad day at work, someone gets their food a little bit late at a brewery. When you have a bad day at work, I don't really know what you do well enough. Anyways, Impa Kasanganay didn't let his one bad moment define his whole career. And that's the really important thing about Kasanganay. He didn't just get put on a poster and then go, okay, I'm going to take my ball and go home. He made the proper improvements. And for Kasanganay, it's interesting. I feel like Sanford MMA, they're kind of like the Toronto Raptors, where they just kind of have this, like, player in mind that they want, because if they get that player, they know how to build around them. It feels like they're doing the same thing with Impa Kasanganay that they're doing with Brendan Allen. I don't need you to be a great striker, I just need you to be a good one. And hey, that really works out great. And the great thing about the Sanford move is they don't want you to become a striker just because now you go to Sanford MMA. They go, hey, we have you for 6 months, this is great. Now your striking is going to be 6 months better, but we don't need to show it right now. We're going to use our striking defensively, we're going to get into the clinch, and we're going to use your strengths to the best of their abilities. And then, once you start, you make it 2, 3, 4 years with that gym, you can see how it pays off. Look at Gilbert Burns, for instance. Impa Kasanganay has really made those adjustments, and he has become a much better defensive striker on the feet. The thing about Impa Kasanganay, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, he reminds me a lot of Yoel Romero in his striking, but not with the explosion at the end of it. He's very defensively minded on the feet, and he will only focus on single shots offensively, almost in pursuit of defense. He holds his hands very high, he throws his 1-2 a lot, he will throw a kick to the body, but Impa Kasanganay is not the type of fighter who really leaves himself open and lets his opponent counter.
Unless he grabs a kick, holds it for too long, and then eats one to the face, and again, cue the Twitter meme. But yeah, it is really tricky because for Harris, throws really nice leg kicks, throws decent boxing combinations, and for a guy that's not at a super gym, he just continued to go to a smaller gym, and he continues to post results, and that's the big thing. Took on a really good level of competition. I know we talked about that in the rookie review, but I absolutely love every facet of Harris's game, and he really understands. You talk about defensive movements on the feet. Carlston Harris is one of those grapplers that you make a slight mistake, you don't get anaconda and Darce chokes easily. Those are for the greatest of grapplers. You talk about Vicente Luque a lot. He's a master of those. So for Harris, you look at it, and I really wanted to bring up athletic prowess because for Kasanganay, I bring it up, younger guy that got into MMA not that long ago, that uses some of his physical talents, but he's a decent wrestler. He's a decent striker. Now, for Kasanganay, he has a reach advantage a lot of the time. In this one, it's going to be really close. He gives up about an inch. He gives up a little bit in terms of height, but everything's pretty close. But he's one of those guys that uses long-range weapons, his kicks. He uses the kind of whip at the end of his punch. Now, is it the most powerful? Not necessarily, because he does end up going to a lot of decisions. So that could be to his detriment against a guy like Carlston Harris. You look at it at the 5-on-in. He's got that one loss to Jarrah Hussein Al-Salawi that we already talked about. Probably one of the better prospects at 170 pounds that we don't have in the UFC. Lost that one by knockout. Lost a split to Julio Cesar Andrade back in 2016. And then has a few losses from early on in his career. 10 and 9 years ago. So for Harris, he just continues to win at an older age. For Impa Kasanganay, still, I would say fairly green, but you can definitely tell he's learning on the job every time out. In the UFC, win over Maki Pitolo, lost to Buckley, win over Palatnikov his last time out by submission. Certainly surprised me with that one because Palatnikov, decent grappler.
He manhandled him, though.
Decent grappler. Kasanganay look great, Matt. The odds for this fight, we got Kasanganay open to minus 150, he's minus 135 right now. Harris open to plus 130, he's plus 110. If we head on over to Tapology, it's a surprise to me because 1,021 total votes, 76% Kasanganay, 66% have him to win by decision, 26% by knockout. For the 24% that have Harris to win, 55% by submission. To me, that's kind of, Kasanganay is a huge name. Maybe people are going with name value over there because those odds are fairly close. I have a hard time with this one, honestly.
I still like Impa Kasanganay because this is the problem. I think Carlston Harris needs to get the takedown at some point to win this fight. I do think he has good boxing combinations, but I don't think he's such a good striker that he can just win a 15-minute fight at the UFC level on the feet. I do really think he is going to have to incorporate the grappling at some point. And the thing about Impa Kasanganay is he's not just good at defending strikes, of course. He does have great takedown defense, too. Physical strength really does play a part into his game. And I do think he can just do enough every single round to slightly edge out a decision win over Harris. Again, I don't think he's going to make this fight very entertaining because the more entertaining it is, probably the more it plays into Harris's game. But I do think Kasanganay can walk away with another decision win. I really do. Kasanganay reminds me of Kai Kamaka. We're going to have to make a list for fighters with crazy physique but no knockout power. But yeah, Kasanganay is one of those odd characters where he doesn't really have a lot of finished wins, even though you would look at him and assume he can starch everybody with one punch.
Carlston Harris, he's won his last 4 fights by finish. Claudio Rocha, Alex Santos, Sagid, Izagamev, and then Christian Aguilera submitting him in the first round of their fight. Like I said, I have this one as a toss-up. I want to hear from you down below in the comment section on this one. I'm ever so slightly giving the edge to Impa Kasanganay, but I don't have the most confidence in that one. So I want to hear from you down below. Both of us right now going with Impa Kasanganay, but listen, I think Harris has a great opportunity here to really get a big win and vault himself into the conversation at 170 pounds fairly quickly too. Only 2 fights in. We have Kasanganay. Want to hear from you. 15 fights on this card, headlined by Superman Spann taking on Anthony Smith. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.